In a world that's more than meets the eye, where sentient mechanical beings can transform into anything you can imagine, a sleek jet screaming across the sky, a flashy sports car tearing down the highway, even a rugged trailer truck leading the charge. I'm pretty sure that a robot transforming into, well, this wasn't topping too many of the kiddies' Christmas lists. No wings, no racing stripes, no battle station mode, just sirens, or what we in my country would call a wang wang, or for you Westerners, a wang wang. But you see, here's the thing: jets get shot down, cars crash, trucks flip over, and when the smoke clears and the battle's done, somebody has to be there to put everyone back together. Whenever a new batch of characters rolls out through a toy line, their fate usually falls into a few neat little categories: instant superstar, certified fan favorite, mid or meh, and then of course the stinkers, the ones nobody really cares about, but ironically almost every kid ended up with because they were the only ones warming up the pegs at the local toy store. And when you look at the first wave of Transformers in 1984, it's pretty clear that the Autobot Ratchet didn't exactly scream breakout hit. First off, he was an ambulance, which in the real world is a very, very, very important vehicle. But to a kid, it basically looked like a toaster on wheels. And then he transformed into this, a thing. I mean, it technically looked like a robot. It had arms, it had legs, but at first glance it looked kind of headless. And only after a quick peek behind the windshield would you discover a sticker that was apparently supposed to be his face. So yeah, not exactly the strongest starting point for the Autobot medic. To be fair, when comic book writer Bob Budiansky was handed the unenviable task of creating names and personalities for more than 25 different toys over a single weekend, he did at least try to make the idea of a robot that turned into an ambulance interesting, or at the very least, different from the usual stoic, overly serious, borderline bland doctor stereotype of the times. First came the name. After floating around ideas like grease finger and cool hand lube, Budiansky settled on Ratchet, which you would think was a straightforward reference to the ratchet tool, used for tightening and loosening bolts with a flick of the wrist. But no, the name was actually inspired by Nurse Ratched, the cold authoritarian head nurse from the 1962 novel and 1975 film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But with a twist. Instead of leaning into that icy villain energy, Budiansky flipped it completely, turning a name associated with control and cruelty into a character defined by compassion and dry wit. Then he went even further, describing the Autobot medic as something of a party animal, which sounds fun on paper but is absolutely the last kind of dude I'd want operating on me in real life. And speaking of dudes, I'm guessing, taking a cue from the original Nurse Ratched, Budiansky's early notes suggest Ratchet may have initially been conceived as female, an idea that was immediately shot down by Hasbro, who didn't want any girl characters in their boy toy line. The 80s. Anyway, what we ended up with was a kind of happy medium. Ratchet's original tech spec described him as the best tool and die man of Cybertron, can make anything from a pin to a missile, repairs injured Autobots if he's got the right parts, still likes to party, gets backtalk, but does any job as well as anyone. You break it, I'll remake it. It's a simple motto, and it tells you everything. Later writers really leaned into that foundation and fleshed him out into something more distinct. He's lighthearted but with a rough edge, a jokester with an irreverent bedside manner, the kind of medic who will patch up a fallen comrade and then casually ask, "So, when does the party start?" Optimus Prime recognizes that Ratchet's humor and sometimes his coarse language actually keeps the team mentally balanced during wartime. Ratchet makes it a point of being a friend first and a doctor second, which might be exactly why the others trust him when things get bad. Unfortunately, despite his skill with laser scalpels, arc welders, electron microscopes, electrical sensors, diagnostic equipment, and fluid dispensers, Ratchet isn't exactly built for the front lines. He's not especially strong, not particularly resistant to enemy fire, which, as we'll see later on, becomes painfully obvious. In the original cartoon, I remember one of my first impressions of him being courtesy of Soundwave, who casually lifts him over his head and slams his head into a console. Not exactly the most heroic debut, although his bedside manner does show up early on, like when he shuts down an injured Ironhide mid-complaint just to stop him from whining while he works, cheerfully joking that old Ironhide is gonna pull through nicely, with a mischievous chuckle. Still, in the cartoon, Ratchet is rarely the spotlight hero, but make no mistake, he's the hero in the background. He's constantly there, repairing Autobots after every firefight, keeping them functional. And sometimes, he's not just fixing bots, he's building them. While he's credited as part of the group that created the aerial bots on Cybertron, I'd argue his greatest achievement alongside his resident mad scientist buddy Wheeljack would be the creation of the Dinobots, Slag, Sludge, and the leader Grimlock, and later Swoop and Snarl. That alone cements Ratchet as one of the most indispensable Autobots on the roster. Well, at least until a new medic rolled in with a shiny combining team and arguably a better toy. Once Ratchet's toy was discontinued in 1985 and First Aid and his Protecto buds were lined up for 1986, it does start to feel like the writing was on the wall, and sure enough, very early in The Transformers, the movie, Ratchet joins Ironhide, Prowl, and Brawn aboard a shuttle to Autobot City. The shuttle gets intercepted, boarded, and this time the Decepticons don't just slam his head into a console. Nope, this time his lack of frontline durability finally catches up to him. The scene is brutal. He's riddled with laser fire, smoke fuming from his chest, and his limp body is kept standing thanks to relentless blasts. I mean, for a kids movie, it was pretty graphic. It wasn't ambiguous, it wasn't maybe he'll be okay. The good doctor was dead. And just in case anyone held on to just a sliver of hope like I did for Brawn, because I mean, come on, how in the world does a bot who shrugged off a direct blast from Megatron's fusion cannon to the chest in the cartoon go down with a single shot to the shoulder? But I digress. Ratchet's final resting place is revealed in a haunting giant Autobot mausoleum drifting through space that eventually gets pulled into a literal star. Yeah, I think it's safe to say he wasn't coming back. Fortunately, the Marvel Comics gave Ratchet a little more room to breathe. Like in the cartoon, he was part of the original crew of Autobots who crashed on Earth. Interestingly, because the updated character model wasn't available when the series first launched, Ratchet was still being drawn like his toy in the first couple issues. And not that there's any connection, but I just wanted to point out that Minibot Windcharger was a freaking giant. Anyway, one of the things the comic really leaned into is Ratchet's belief that life, all life, matters. There's a great early moment where he assists human paramedics trying to save their allies Sparkplug Witwicky. And there's no hesitation, no organic versus mechanical divide. A patient is a patient, period. That's Ratchet. The oath comes before the faction symbol. And then, the book does something that the cartoon never really did. It placed Ratchet in the spotlight. When Shockwave systematically defeats and disables almost the entire Autobot team, literally hanging their bodies from the ceiling like slabs of meat, Ratchet discovers he's the last functioning Autobot on Earth, suddenly left with no choice but to step up, which he does. But he doesn't do it with brute strength. He does it with brains. Ratchet plays politics. He makes a binding right of oneness pact with a weakened Megatron, the Autobots' freedom in exchange for defeating Shockwave, which brings Ratchet to the Savage Land, the location of the one-eyed Decepticons' previous defeat. Well, stalemate, with, you guessed it, the Dinobots, who in the comics weren't creations of Ratchet, but him recovering them where they lay dormant in a tar pit prison for billions of years, and repairing them serves as a nice parallelism. Anyway, long story short, Ratchet doesn't actually confront Shockwave directly, which is probably for the best, as he correctly figures out Megatron had zero intention of honoring their little agreement anyway. So instead, Ratchet does something smarter. He sicks the Dinobots on the Decepticon leader when they meet atop a snowy mountain. I mean, it's a solid plan, and it would have worked on pretty much any Decepticon not named Megatron. Unfortunately, it is Megatron, and he makes short work of the Dinobots. Desperate, Ratchet charges him himself. And while Megatron barely moves, the impact weakens the cliff beneath him, just enough to send the Decepticon leader tumbling down and disappearing in the snow below. Ratchet doesn't overpower Megatron. He outthinks him. He uses the environment, he uses timing, and he frickin' uses dinosaurs. And while he does eventually rescue and repair most of his fellow Autobots, the strain of being the only medic starts to crack him, especially after the Underbase saga, where an overpowered Starscream basically wipes out almost every Transformer who doesn't currently have a toy on the shelves. I mean, talk about a convenient plot device to clear inventory and make room for new characters. Anyway, trying to revive an entire army nearly breaks Ratchet. The pressure, the responsibility, the endless repairs. It pushes him into hallucinations and a full psychological spiral. It's one of the rare times the comics really show how heavy that burden is. Eventually, his story turns even darker. Later in the series, Ratchet decides to end Megatron once and for all, even if it costs him his own life. No ambiguous fell off a mountain this time. He redirects bombs planted on the Ark into Megatron's base, tackles him to prevent his escape, and triggers an explosion meant to destroy them both. Except, he doesn't die, and neither does Megatron. Instead, the blast hurls them into a strange dimension between warp portals called Unspace. And when they're eventually recovered, they return fused together, a hideous molecular hybrid of Ratchet and Megatron. The creature rampages through the Ark, injuring Autobots, while Ratchet, still conscious inside that nightmare body, literally begs to be put down. Even then, Optimus Prime refuses to allow his troops to kill it outright. The monstrosity, you know what, let's just call him Ratchetron, is eventually subdued and placed in stasis. Until later, when Grimlock unknowingly revives both Ratchet and Megatron using a mysterious power-enhancing substance called Nucleon. Ratchet's return doesn't last long though. Chaos erupts aboard the Ark with Megatron, Shockwave, Starscream, and Galvatron duking it out. And when Starscream tries to finish off a weakened Ratchet and mocks him for good measure, Ratchet snaps, full berserker mode, and actually takes him down. But determined to end the cycle once and for all, Ratchet blows up the Ark as it approaches the Earth, sending himself and the Decepticons crashing towards another presumed death. And honestly, that could have been the end, as the series itself wrapped up just a few issues later. But years into the future, IDW continued the Marvel continuity with Regeneration 1, and things somehow got worse. After the Ark's second crash, Megatron is revived and still physically and mentally bonded to Ratchet, exploits that connection, siphoning Ratchet's technical knowledge to seize control of the ship and raise a legion of Cybertronian zombies. To maintain control, Megatron literally keeps Ratchet's disembodied head mounted to his battle sled. Fully conscious, fully aware, just yeesh. And when Megatron resumes his war against the Autobots, even a zombified Starscream can't resist being a traitor and reveals Megatron's weakness to Kup. Because of their mighty bond, killing Ratchet would also disable Megatron, which means the only way to stop the Decepticon leader is to put down the Autobot medic. With no other option, Kup uses a weapon supplied by First Aid, who I'm guessing would quietly inherit the top medic position with Ratchet gone, just saying, and ends Ratchet's life to free him from his suffering. As predicted, Megatron is immediately paralyzed, giving Optimus Prime the opening he needs to jam his fist into Meg's chest and grab hold of his spark and crush it, finally destroying his greatest enemy once and for all. Now, while it seemed that IDW sort of definitively ended Ratchet's existence in that original continuity, they thankfully gave him new life in their own brand new universe. In fact, you could argue he pretty much kicked the whole thing off, becoming the first Autobot to make contact with a human on Earth. As part of Prowl's super secret Earth unit, Ratchet immediately sets himself apart with a moral compass that refuses to stay quiet. Most notably, Ratchet breaks cover to rescue their new human allies, Verity Carlo and Hunter O'Neill, from the Decepticons, a move that earns him no small amount of frustration with Prowl. Strategy says stay hidden. Ratchet says save the life in front of you. That tension between conscience and command becomes a defining trait. But it's later, when IDW really finds its groove and starts going cosmic with their storytelling, that Ratchet truly levels up. We learn that millions of years ago on Cybertron, he wasn't just a battlefield medic. He was a respected Senate Chief Medical Officer who secretly ran a free clinic for the planet's poorest citizens, the so-called empties. And one of those patients, a young circuit booster addict named Drift. Ratchet saved his life, and seeing something in the broken bot told him he was destined for something special. And oh, those words end up carrying a lot of weight. But we'll get to that story in a bit, because before that, in the present day, things take a sharp turn when Ratchet travels to the Autobot medical facility of Delphi on Mesotine and reconnects with another Autobot doctor named Pharma. Let's just say that relationship is complicated. Long before the war, Ratchet and Pharma weren't just colleagues, they were friends. Both were forged with unbelievably precise hands, a level of manual dexterity some bots attributed to the Cybertronian god Adaptus. They were the gold standard. Ratchet respected Pharma enough that when his own hands began failing due to advanced form of fatigue millions of years later, he quietly saw Pharma as his natural successor as Chief Medical Officer. But when they went their separate ways, Ratchet to Earth and Pharma to Mesotine, things went downhill. At least for Pharma. See, Mesotine happened to sit dangerously close to Decepticon Justice Division territory, and the DJD are not the kind of bots you politely ignore. And so Pharma resorts to extreme measures to keep his facility safe and running. When Ratchet and company arrive at Delphi to investigate the unusually high death rate of its patients, they discover the facility overrun by a deadly virus called Red Rust that causes total liquefaction the instant an infected Cybertronian transforms. It doesn't take long for Ratchet to start putting the pieces together, and Pharma's little operation is exposed. To keep his medical facility operational, Pharma struck a deal with the leader of the DJD, Tarn, protection in exchange for harvested transformation cogs taken from his own patients. And to speed things up, he engineered the Red Rust virus himself. More dead patients, more cogs. In the end, Pharma is defeated with his hands severed, and Pharma himself seemingly falling to his death. And what does Ratchet do next? Well, pure clinical pragmatism. With his own hands failing and no equal replacements available, he surgically attaches Pharma's severed hands to his own wrists. It saves his career, but now Ratchet, the healer, is performing life-saving operations with the hands of a mass murderer, turning that rivalry into something deeply personal and deeply disturbing, especially since Pharma survives. Rebuilt with advanced tool-shifting hands, Pharma becomes obsessed, not just with reclaiming his original hands, but with proving his superiority to Ratchet. He captures him, dismantles him, reduces the legendary medic to a head and a spark casing. And Ratchet's way out? He attacks Pharma's ego, proposes a doctor-off, a surgical duel. Who's the better medic? Pharma restores Ratchet's body for the contest, and the challenge: reassemble a bisected patient faster than the other. And the unwilling participants? First Aid and another Medibot named Ambulon. Ratchet assumes a clean waist-level cut, but Pharma mocks him, then proceeds to chainsaw Ambulon lengthwise just to make the surgery impossible, just to make sure Ratchet loses. So no, this feud doesn't end with redemption. Pharma later attempts escape but fails to pass a guilt-detecting force field, proof he feels absolutely no remorse, and so First Aid ends it permanently. I suppose slicing First Aid lengthwise earlier might have improved his odds. Well, hindsight is 2020. And in a weird twist, after his death, it's revealed that Pharma's spark had been absorbed by Adaptus himself. Before his final erasure, it's implied that his obsession with Ratchet, the rivalry, the cruelty, may have actually come from a warped, unrequited love for his former mentor. And speaking of love, that's something IDW's Ratchet eventually receives. No, not from Pharma, but from a former circuit booster addict from his past named Drift. Wait, what? Okay, for those not in the know, Transformers don't technically have gender or reproduce the way we organics do. But in IDW's universe, they absolutely can form deep romantic bonds, emotional attachment, lifelong partnership. And in this continuity, that bond is called a conjunx endura, basically a sparkmate, a spouse. Now, your mileage may vary on where you land with that concept. Some fans embraced it, and some needed a minute. But for better or worse, it became a meaningful part of Ratchet's story. And speaking of meaningful, if you're having a meaningful time here on the channel, why not take the plunge and join the channel membership? As a friend of the Toy Shelf, you'll get shoutouts, early access, and the occasional exclusive bit of content, all for the price of a measly $1. Yup, $1. About the cost of, well, not much these days actually. All you've got to do is click that join button on the channel homepage and you're golden. But however you choose to support the channel, it truly means a lot to me, so thank you. So remember when Ratchet once told Drift he was destined for something special? Well, that same bot eventually became Deadlock, a Decepticon, an assassin. Whole separate story. We'll cover that properly another time. But when Ratchet and Drift meet again, Deadlock has shed the Decepticon insignia, reclaimed the name Drift, and is serving as an Autobot aboard the Lost Light, captained by Rodimus on a mission to find the Knights of Cybertron. And no, Ratchet isn't instantly sold on Drift's new spiritual reformed warrior routine. He's skeptical, and not exactly handing out trust medals to a former Decepticon hitman. But things shift during the Red Rust crisis at Delphi. You know the one. With the Decepticon Justice Division closing in, an infected and extremely weakened Drift quietly asks Ratchet to put him out, rather than let him fall into the DJD's hands. Ratchet instantly snaps back. Don't you dare. That's the moment. That's the pivot! That's where this stops being medic and patient and starts becoming something else. Or so I'm told. Later, when Drift is exiled from the Lost Light after taking the fall for the Decepticon overlord's secret smuggling aboard the ship, a decision that ends in multiple crew deaths, Ratchet does something that says everything. He steps down as chief medical officer and goes after him, and he finds Drift on the fringes of space, hunting down rogue Decepticons and trying to outrun his own history. Ratchet doesn't approach him as an officer, not as a doctor, but as someone who cares. And when he asks Drift to return, if not as an Autobot, he says, then as a friend. That's the shift. By the time the finale rolls around and reality itself is coming apart at the seams, the two finally stop pretending. They acknowledge what's been building for years and become conjunx endurae, life partners. After the war, they spend their time traveling the galaxy together. No crisis, no battlefield triage, just peace. Until Ratchet faces the one thing he can't repair, himself. In the end, Ratchet succumbs to age-related burnout, the slow wear he'd always feared, and even in death, he's still thinking about others. He leaves his famously precise hands to whirl, an Autobot whose own hands had been taken from him by the Senate millions of years earlier. He asks that his remaining parts be donated to medical centers and that the energon from his funeral be given to refugees. And on his memorial is the simplest, most complete summary of his life. Without love, there is no meaning. And that, in a nutshell, is IDW's Ratchet, a bot who goes out on his own terms, accepting his inevitable date with Father Time. No heroic last stand, no tragic old yeller moment, just a medic who's done his duty, laid down his tools, and quietly lets the years catch up to him. Which makes our next version of Ratchet feel like the complete opposite. Because while IDW's Ratchet made peace with growing old, another version looked at his grizzled, battle-worn frame and decided he was not quite done yet. In fact, you could say he was quite animated about it. In Transformers Animated, Ratchet is a disillusioned war veteran. Before the Great War, he was one of Cybertron's finest mechanics, but centuries of conflict left him bitter, cynical, scarred, and much of that traces back to one defining encounter. Early in the war, Ratchet and fellow Autobot RC are captured by the bounty hunter Lockdown. RC carries security codes in her head that the Decepticons desperately want, and with no other option, she begs Ratchet to use his EMP generator to wipe her memory before they can extract them. The blast protects the code, but leaves RC a mindless husk, and Ratchet carries that guilt for centuries. Lockdown keeps the EMP as a trophy, and leaves Ratchet literally scarred, a chunk of his helmet broken off. And that damage isn't just physical. The PTSD runs deep. So yeah, taking a cue from Murtaugh, Ratchet basically decides he's too old for this shit. And despite taking over RC's position as mentor to Omega Supreme, a literal walking weapon of mass destruction, he opts out of frontline heroics and takes what he sees as a dead-end assignment repairing space bridges. Anything to stay away from the war. And that's how he ends up on Earth. There he finds himself stuck with a young, optimistic leader, a prowling cyber ninja, a bulky but well-meaning powerhouse, and a buzzy little speedster, and naturally becomes the steady, grumpy hand holding this motley crew together. He complains the whole time, but he shows up every time, and of course, the ghosts follow him. Lockdown returns, reigniting their rivalry by targeting Ratchet's new friends, but this time, Ratchet wins. He outsmarts the hunter, reclaims his EMP generator, and takes back a piece of himself in the process. And later, when the Autobots need a great equalizer against the Decepticons, Ratchet reactivates Omega Supreme to answer the call. Throughout the series, he serves as the wise old dude, blending cantankerous wit and battlefield gravitas, channeling a bit of Dr. McCoy energy. Gruff, sarcastic, but immovably principled. And over time, he begins to confront his trauma instead of running from it. It's a very well done and thought out version of Ratchet, if you ask me. But here's the funny part. This version almost didn't exist. Early plans called for a younger female medic named Red Alert to originally fill his role on the team. She eventually appears in a cameo, but once again, Ratchet was nearly reimagined as a female character. In the end, though, I think we got the better deal. Animated Ratchet is about scars, about choosing to keep fighting even when you're tired, about carrying guilt, trauma, and still showing up anyway. A medic who refuses to stop caring, even when it hurts. And speaking of when it hurts, I give you Ratchet from the live-action Bay movies, because after everything we just went through, all those layered, thoughtful, battle-scarred versions of the Autobot medic, this supposed real-world take, it just hurts. I mean, from his near zero personality to doing almost nothing of real consequence across his appearances, to that brutal end, hunted down by the very humans he once chose to protect. And of all individuals, it's Lockdown, yes, that Lockdown, who ultimately puts the poor doctor out of his misery, ripping his spark from his chest and leaving his lifeless head to the humans to be melted down for transformium. Yeah, this one's rough, but to be fair, there are a few positives. First and foremost, the alt mode, trading in the white toaster on wheels for a lime green Hummer H2 search and rescue vehicle. That's definitely a glow up. See, I can speak that kiddie lingo too. 6'7", 6'7". Sorry, that was for my daughters. Love you. Second, aside from Prime and B, he actually outlasts the rest of the original Autobot crew introduced in the first movie, surviving all the way to the fourth film, Transformers Age of Extinction, where his age ultimately leads to his extinction. Sorry, that was a pretty weak line. Unlike Ratchet, who also had arguably one of the funniest lines in the entire franchise, when he sniffs out Sam in front of Michaela and casually announces, "The boy's pheromone levels suggest he wants to mate with the female." Clinical, unfiltered, hilarious. And finally, live-action Ratchet manages one more decent appearance later on in the kinda sorta prequel movie, the Bumblebee movie, in a blink and you'll miss it moment right at the beginning, and he actually looks much more like his G1 self, which I guess is a good thing moving forward. Although, seeing his buddy Wheeljack looking just as good there, and then showing up in the next movie looking like this, yeah, my hopes aren't very high for Ratchet. But beyond that, there really isn't much meat on the bone. No deep arc, no defining internal struggle, no philosophical stance on war or medicine. Just a cool vehicle mode, and a pretty grim send-off. So with that being said, let's move on to a quick speed round on the other notable Ratchets worth mentioning. The first three actually being the same guy despite appearing in three completely different shows in both style and tone. First up, the ultra-serious Transformers Prime. Here, Ratchet is basically the grumpy genius holding the entire operation together. He's Optimus's closest friend, the team's tech support, field medic, and sometimes the only adult in the room, with dual giant scalpel knives to carve up the enemy if need be. In one Spotlight episode, Ratchet tests synthetic energon on himself out of sheer desperation, which increases his aggression levels significantly, as well as lower his judgment capabilities. He openly questions Prime's leadership and goes rogue to take on Megatron himself, and yeah, it goes about as well as you'd expect. Fortunately, he is rescued by the Autobots in time before his Decepticon surgeon counterpart Knockdown ends him. But if you ask me, the best thing about Prime Ratchet is Jeffrey Combs, who at the time I mainly knew as Kevin Burkhoff, the paranoid neuroscientist from the most excellent show, The 4400. And with the utmost respect to the legend, wait for it, Derry Don Messick, the original G1 voice, and to all the other great Ratchets over the years, including Corey Burton and Robert Foxworth, Chase Gioberti from Falcon Crest. Anyone? Anyone? Man, I love that show. Okay, sorry, focus. Jeffrey Combs gives what I honestly think is the definitive Ratchet, period. That same Ratchet continues in the much lighter Transformers, Robots in Disguise, where he gets sidelined politically for being too loyal to Optimus. So instead of picking fights with the High Council, he goes off hunting Decepticon fugitives like some intergalactic bounty cop. Less frontline medic and more seasoned advisor, showing up when things get serious and quietly reminding everyone how leadership is supposed to work. And finally, in the more kid-targeted Transformers Rescue Bots Academy, Ratchet shifts fully into mentor mode. He even gets a nephew. Medics. Exactly how? Let's just not get into that. He runs simulations, builds training tech, and becomes that tough but fair instructor who pretends he's annoyed but secretly loves seeing the rookies succeed. Less war trauma and more, did you even read the manual? Now, Ratchet from the Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy starts out in a unique place. A former weapons engineer who becomes so disillusioned with the war that he quits the battlefield entirely and opens up a secret clinic on Iacon, treating Autobots and Decepticons alike. At first, he refuses to pick sides, believing saving lives matters more than winning battles. But when Megatron's plan threatens the Allspark itself, Ratchet reluctantly joins the fight, proving that even when he walks away from war, he can't walk away from responsibility. And possibly taking a cue from IDW, this Ratchet also forms a bond with a former Decepticon, Impactor, who Ratchet repairs after he's left dead by his comrades, and eventually, Impactor gives his life, taking a blast that is meant for Ratchet. And just to cover all our verses, we've got Transformers Cyberverse. Here, Ratchet goes back to being the overworked battlefield medic, present from the start of the war all the way to the end. This version's biggest claim to fame? It's implied that he fixes Bumblebee's voice box, putting an end to the whole radio speak gimmick, which was a fun novelty back in 2007, but by this point had become completely and utterly annoying. More than anything though, this take reinforces the core idea. Ratchet doesn't clock out. He will just keep going. And speaking of keeping things going, let's talk toys. So, 1984 gave us this, which, to be fair, made perfect sense in the Diaclone world it originally came from, where Ratchet and the other car robos weren't sentient robots, but mechs piloted by tiny humans. Still, credit to Takara Tomy for trying to spruce things up with the 2007 Encore reissue, which came with a head. Okay, yeah, nice try. If you want to go down that path, I'd suggest the upgrade kit route, because they're definitely out there. Like this one from, I'm guessing, a no longer existing company, Gear for Toys. And finally in 2008, we even got another G1 reissue in emergency green. You know, like in the movies. Our first truly modern Ratchet toy though, not counting some hastily repainted BotCon exclusive, also showed up in 2008 as part of the Transformers Universe line. This one turned Ratchet into an emergency SUV. The transformation was, let's call it, enthusiast level. It definitely had its issues. The alt mode had a few too many panel lines and he was a little too small. But I still think it was a solid little toy with its weapon that switched from a Gatling gun to a blade, and it got a nicer deco the following year in Japan's Henkei Transformers line. 2008 also gave us animated Ratchet from the excellent Transformers animated line, complete with spring-loaded magnets on his arms that could be swapped out for different tools, stored in his back, as well as a detachable EMP generator that could also attach to the animated Lockdown toy. How cool is that? I would say very cool. He also came in yellow, and even a Cybertronian mode Ratchet that transformed into, well, a turtle. Oh, and sometime this year, this Ratchet is scheduled for a comeback of sorts with a more G1ified style as part of the Age of the Primes line. In the years that followed, we also got solid toys for pretty much all the aligned continuity versions. 2012 gave us Transformers Prime Ratchet in both standard and Beast Hunters flavors. Transformers Robots in Disguise Ratchet got a toy in 2016, and Transformers Rescue Bots Academy in 2021. And in 2024, we even got a Gamer Edition Ratchet based on his look in the War for Cybertron video game. And speaking of Wars for Cybertron, the 2019 Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy Siege line gave us a really cool Cybertronian mode Ratchet, which was then retooled into a somewhat clumsy Earth mode for Earthrise. And if you spent extra money on upgrade kits trying to make that version look right, you might have been a little annoyed when a proper Voyager class Studio Series 86 Ratchet dropped in 2023. Based on that G1 design scene getting riddled with laser fire in The Transformers, the movie. And yes, if you wanted to relive that trauma, there was even a dead version released the following year. Around this time, we also got a whole bunch of live-action Ratchet toys. The original chonky Voyager from 2007, a linear deluxe for the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, another deluxe for Transformers Dark of the Moon with flip-out spinning power saw weapon, and for Age of Extinction, a sparkless Ratchet with melting head action feature. Just kidding. And later, a more G1-inspired Ratchet from the Bumblebee movie. But if you really wanted screen accuracy, Hasbro gave us the Studio Series movie version in 2018. Although, your mileage may vary on exactly how accurate this toy truly was. I mean, if accuracy is your thing, then why not splurge a little more on the movie masterpiece version from 2020? Though honestly, the better built and cheaper KO version might be the smarter move. And since we've gone there, let's take a quick U-turn back to Masterpiece G1 style Ratchet. Takara Tomy finally gave him an official release in 2016, and it's Fine. Assuming you're okay with the slightly odd proportions and the tires on his ass. I mean, I like big butts and I cannot lie, but this might be a little bit too much rubber. And if the official one isn't your jam, third-party companies have a good number of alternatives. Way back in 2015, there was Salus from the company Voodoo Robots, which over a decade later can still seem to hold its own against the newer entries in the game. More recently, we've gotten X-Transbot's Ratlift in 2024, and Fantastic Models Doc in 2025. They definitely look better than the official one, but from what I hear, transforming them can be a bit of a nightmare. And speaking of nightmares, is this monstrosity even a Transformer? Or is he just pretending? If you want to know more about the Decepticon pretender Bludgeon, I've got his story here. Or if you want to check out my latest video, that's over here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you in the comments below. Were you excited when you got a toaster on wheels for Christmas? Go ahead and tell me your story.